so much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to DevCon. Welcome to Bangkok. Before I start, we're going to do something a bit different. I think many of us have just had lunch. We've sort of been easing into this air-conditioned, closed space. So if you like, I welcome you to stand up for just a few seconds and just stretch that body, and you can stretch all the way up. You can go on your toes if you like, left and right. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the future, what's important, and sometimes it's important to get back to our bodies. And let's together just take 3 deep breaths and just ground into the space. So you can breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out, and breathe in and out. And I invite you to take your seat again. Thank you for breathing with me. Thank you for breathing all together. The title of this talk is Layer Zero, Reimagining and Thinking About Ancient Philosophies to Build New Worlds. My name is Dave. Yes, that's my name. And no, I'm not a dev. And I represent different spaces thinking about technology and how we can align technology more towards our planet and human values. So I've had this question a lot. A lot of people ask me, so what I mean by layer zero? And I want to start off, actually, I've been inspired by the layer zero from the Web3 and the crypto space. You know, we have layer ones. And we've talked about this morning, we heard from Aya about her vision of the infinite garden, about decentralization, about open source, the cypherpunk movement, all of these values that align Ethereum, all of these values that bring us together to build decentralized tech, to build these new worlds. And that's amazing. That's amazing that we have this technology that allows us to do this, to build stable coins, to build the kinds of tech that we can self-custody and really take ownership. And so these provide the values of layer zero, of the infinite garden. With layer zero is going deeper, going into the invisible layer, that human layer, the values that really make us as beings, make us as a civilization, and make us as a planet. And these values that we embody is ultimately what's diffused into the technology and what's created. So trauma. We all grew up in different parts of the world, and we've all suffered through all kinds of violence from childhood. From some of us have grown up in conflict zones. Today, many of us live in areas where there's war and violence. Belief systems, our ideas of who we are, what do we want, what makes us happy, all of these things that drive us to get more money, to find fame, to find recognition, these things that are driving us in invisible ways. And this human layer, this layer zero, is really critical because without this, everything that we want to build, these DAOs, the network states, Ethereum itself, will face challenges and will struggle to really grow. There's this beautiful quote from J. Krishnamurti, "A world is a reflection of our inner minds." And so it's our minds, how we think, how we imagine, what we think about ourselves and the world that we want to build, that ultimately is reflected outside of us, each one of us in a decentralized fashion, contributing to this world that we all live in. And what happens when we don't have very clean minds, right? You know, we're all living, we've all been through this, and it doesn't matter Web3, Web2, technology space in general, the economy in general. These are the kinds of the cultures that our societies and the culture of our time really value. And you know, we like to place a lot of blame on the individual, but the individuals are products of the cultures that we create and that we're part of. Free basics, again, Web2, Web3, doesn't really make a difference, right? We're building these technology systems, we're supposedly trying to create a more connected world, yet we're doing it in ways that are ultimately centralizing and ultimately monopolizing power and ultimately pulling away from these human values. There's a beautiful blog, Web3 is going great, that just captures the many, many scams that, you know, are part of this industry, and we can't ignore that. You know, the degen cultures that are part of it, and that can be celebrated, and that's great, and we should celebrate all cultures, a plurality of cultures, as we heard from Audrey Tang just a moment ago. Yet we have to also be real that if we want to transcend these problems, we really have to bring our reflection back into what is it that we continue to create these problems. We're living today in a unbalanced, dark forest world. Many of you may have read the Three Body Problem, science fiction series that looks at how the theory that like our world is ultimately governed by fear, where we're encouraged to be silent, not be open, and the world that we're living today is a reflection again of our inner minds. And so these are our inner minds that we have to contend with, that we have to make peace with. War, violence, our environment turning around us. For those of us in Thailand, we just went through one of the largest floods in recorded history. Many of you coming from all over the world, experiencing your own disasters, your own problems. And there's been a lot of research over the last 10 years to actually show how many of the problems in our digital spaces, the very problems that Web3 itself, the idea of 3 being different from 2, was created, the idea being of owning is because it's trying to transcend these problems. Yet, as this research is showing, as the problems are systemic, the problems are deeply rooted into our political systems, into our economic systems, into our very systems of being. Tim Wu's book, Master Switch, talks about how all of media, when it started, right from fax to the telegram up to the internet, has started decentralized, has started open. But ultimately, market forces capture, market forces, state forces, create a centralization. And so as we're sitting today in this Ethereum space, in this Web3 space, we have to be aware that we are against the very forces that actually animate our being. The forces that actually create centralization is not out there. It is not a dark, evil force trying to centralize. It is all part of us, and we are part of these systems. And so if we want to transcend, if we want to create this decentralized, infinite garden, we really need to bring more awareness to what makes us our own minds and makes our own beings. And there's a wonderful essay on crypto's 3-body problem, which brings about, again, this notion that if crypto is to survive, crypto needs to contact with cultures more full-bodied than crypto itself. And so the next phase must require protocols beyond just incentives and smart contracts. We need to integrate with this human layer, with the layer 0. We need to integrate with this layer of values, and it's through these layer values that we can start to move. One of a framework of change known as the causal layer analysis, popular for thinking about transformational change, also highlights this, that for the most powerful and meaningful change to happen, we have to go deep under. What we see tends to be just the tip of the iceberg. We want to go deep into the level of worldviews, the philosophies that govern us, the myths and the metaphors. What is it that makes us alive? What is it that drives us? What is it that makes life alive? How do we understand these? And so this is where sort of coming to in terms of thinking of, okay, how do we build these new worlds? How do we build this infinite garden? And layer 0 sitting right down there. So we are all standing here in Thailand, in Southeast Asia. We heard this morning as well on the kind of values of the mandala value that Aya shared as well around circles and how that has played a role in this region. Asian philosophies, particularly 2 philosophies I want to bring up here on Buddhism and Taoism, have been a GPS for layer 0 navigation in Asia for thousands of years. They've helped people understand themselves. They've helped people create societies that are ultimately very linked to human values and to human flourishing. And these systems have existed. And I think they're very interesting for us to look at today, especially as we build decentralized tech and thinking again about decentralizing power and creating more openness. Because all these philosophies, and particularly Buddhism, Taoism, they emphasize that there is only one problem. It's really simple. It's disconnection. Disconnection from each other and disconnection from the web of life around us. And it is in this state of disconnection that we act from fear, that we act without feeling comfort, without grounding. It is from this disconnection that we fight and we look towards violence. And so the only way towards really recreating new worlds is to reconnect and to move away from the state of disconnection. There is research emerging now that has been looking at the different cosmologies of technology and understanding that technology itself can be understood from many different philosophies and worldviews. We don't have time today to go deep into any of these works, but I'll mention a few key ideas that I think can be useful for us to think through. One of them is from the idea of cosmotechnics and cosmotechnologies in China, which is really looking at how technology itself and the fundamental ethical principle of everything in our world is to keep us more aligned with nature and with our true nature. And so even the role of technology is to keep us in balance with each other and in balance with nature. And technology itself is fundamentally just as part of nature as all of us. It contains matter, it contains minerals, it contains nature, and part of all of us. And this idea that we exist as separate selves, each of us individual disconnected from each other, our minds and bodies disconnected, itself is something that's only really been a notion for the last 300 to 400 years. For thousands of years, this idea of disconnection itself was never there. In Chinese cosmotechnics, Yu Kui, a scholar, brings up this idea of Tao and Qi as a way to think about how we can think about technology and our relationship with it. Very quickly, the idea of the Tao is the universe, the cosmos, the web of life that everything exists within. And Qi is a concept of technology tracing back mostly to Confucian principles, this idea of how technology plays a role in aligning our society to be more aligned with life. And today, our technology is disconnected from the Tao. Today, our technology is disconnected from this web of life. And so we have today a world where we are living with a very disconnected space. And so the idea or the framing is to think about is how do we reconnect technology to the universe? How do we reconnect technology to the Tao? And these are seemingly initially very difficult to grasp and fathom, but there are ways where we can start thinking about it. What does it mean to connect technology to the cosmos, to the Tao? Here there's another concept from Tao's cosmology, thinking about intelligence and what is the source of intelligence and how can we get intelligence from this web of life. In this cosmology, there's two types of knowledge. There's conscious knowledge, which is this everyday awareness of life. Essentially, I'm using conscious knowledge right now to speak in words, and you are hearing me in words and concepts, and we are engaging in this space. And our world today is completely built on conscious knowledge in ways. The other form is real knowledge, which is an immediate knowing inherent in all human beings. That's not the product of knowledge. Other ways you can think about it is wisdom. You may have heard things like trust your gut, creativity, these flow that comes in from a place deeper, a much place deeper than the mind and the rational mind. And so our world today is very much unbalanced towards conscious knowledge and quite unbalanced and not enough real knowledge. And so according to this cosmology, we want to be right in that center, that fusion, that beautiful fusion that is not one or the other. You are still living here in this material plane that we can see and interact and hear, yet we are able to draw on this wisdom from this web of life from which we can start to create completely new ways of economies, new ways of exchanging information, new ways of exchanging value that today seem radical, that today seem unimaginable, yet we are able to draw on this power. Because let's face it, we've all been trained on this dark forest world of information. We've all been trained from institutions and systems, the very institutions and systems that this crypto world seems to want to take on, seems to want to transform, seems to want to change, yet we are part of these systems. And so we have to undo our very programming, the very conditioning of our mind in order to transcend these very systems that we want to change. And so for me, I see spirituality as a very embodied form of decentralization. Each of us have to do the proof of work. We've got to do the mind training. We've got to do the healing. We've got to do the heart opening. No one is going to do it for you, even though we as a collective can all support each other. We each need to do that work. each of us are interconnected nodes in this web of life. There is no one bigger, stronger than the other. We are all part of this web of life together. And so we all support each other and we can all connect to each other. And if we want to create this infinite garden, we have to feel that we can't get the power from just this space of disconnection. We have to reconnect to this web of life. We have to pull this energy that exists all around us, that we're supported from this universe, and use this information, use this energy to guide us in ways that can really transform and push paradigms that seem unimaginable today, but in the next moment, it's possible. A couple of projects that I think are interesting. Pagoda is a network within the Ethereum space of Asian, Southeast Asian, and East Asian community builders, which I'm a part of. And we've been trying to build how do we take these practices of Asian philosophy into embodied practice? How do we build technology while also better reconnecting to life around us, to each other? What does it mean to practice? What does it mean to do that work that I mentioned, the proof of work together? And how do we start to build from there? And so a reflection question that I'd like to sort of pose to you is, how does the crypto world make you feel connected to life? And you may find different answers for yourself, and it's wonderful to think about, is what are the ways that the technology that I use, the crypto that I use, make me feel more fulfilled, more content? And what are the ways that it makes me feel more disconnected? What are the ways where it makes me feel more alienated, more frustrated, more angry? And through these reflections, we can start to think, we can start to have conversations around what is it that we're building? How is it that it's actually improving or changing or making me feel more connected, and perhaps start to make changes in our own lives and in the decisions we make. Many of you here are builders, might be investors, users, consumers, husbands, daughters, sons. All of you play roles, many identities in your lives. And how can we start to use technology to ways that make us more connected to this web of life? Perhaps we can start to then think about what it means to build a metaverse. In Buddhism, metta is love and kindness. This idea that we can build this metaverse which is infused with love and kindness and respect for life around us, which can go beyond just empty words, buzzwords, if you will. Our world is no short of buzzwords. But again, it's going back to this embodied practice of how can I, every day, moment to moment, start to think about what is it that who is it that I'm helping? How am I being more kind to people around me? And what kind of energy do I feel when I actually help people in different ways? And how can I start to feel into that energy even more? So some of the projects that I'm building today that are hoping to sort of create this alignment between spirituality and technology and crypto. Light Forest is a project I've created working with the kernel community at the start of the year towards thinking about how do we bring more light into how we regenerate. How do we start to do these inner journeys of healing, yet also start to imagine, create radically new technology systems. With DigiCNX in Chiang Mai, where I'm based, we're creating a culture of conscious stewardship towards more connection, to have digital nomads like many of us here today, be more connected to the earth, to the land, the soil that we're touching, to be more connected to communities around us, yet be hyper-connected to the world and have the sense of global consciousness. Because we are living in a unique moment where we truly have this global identity. And so how do we harness this global identity in a space while also feeling extremely local and grounded into the earth? And Pagoda, which I just mentioned, well, we're thinking about how do we rewild Web3? How do we bring Asian values and a protocol of being that all of us can bring into our daily lives, bring into our practice, and start to really build these new worlds? So I would love to continue these conversations with all of you. All of you are doing, no doubt, really amazing, beautiful work. I think all of you are motivated towards creating these new spaces, towards creating new systems. And I think we are at this time right now when I think the future of spirituality and the future of this is no longer centralized. It's not about going to a temple or a church, or it's not about going to one leader. It's actually about feeling into the power that we all have and learning how to harness that. And through that, we can start to guide this regeneration and building this infinite garden that Ethereum and many other communities here want to build. So with that, I'll end with this one of my favorite quotes from a Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. We hear a lot about the future. Oftentimes in these spaces, it's completely future-driven. But sometimes it's important to ground in the present and to feel that if we, in every moment, can be truly grounded, to be truly present, and make each moment that we're in better, to make focus on this moment and what you can act, the future itself will emerge as a reflection of that. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much. And I think we have a couple of moments for questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lewis, for all this knowledge. And okay, who's ready to asking questions? I haven't seen any questions yet on the QR place.
We can have conversations whether this form of technology is keeping us more connected or disconnected. I think I see a question there, a hand raised there.
Okay, we have a raised hand here. Just 1 second, they are coming to you.
Hi, I really enjoyed your talk. What I would like to know is if you recommend some books or papers, maybe to dive into these kind of topics.
Yeah, there's a lot. If you want to be on the more academic side, some of the books that I flashed in my slides, and I can sort of share that with you after as well, talk about the systemic issues. I think from a technology front, Chinese Cosmotechnics by Yu Kuei is a great, very philosophical conceptualization. But from a more practical sense, in terms of practices, there are books from Thich Nhat Hanh, the monk that I flashed, from other scholars as well who have sort of on the sort of practice in being. But there's a lot, and also on my website, lightforest.world, I have some resources there as well. So and I'm happy to share more with you and anyone here. Thank you. And the website is lightforest.world.
Hi, Dave.
Hey.
Mitali here. My question for you was that, you know, our relationship with money, the way money looks, feels, etc., has changed over time. Like at some point we had living money, therefore there was a more spiritual connection to it. And we've reached a point where money is no more that tangible. Like the spiritual relationship we have with it has definitely changed. It's moving into a more individual world. How do you think, say, cryptocurrency or the Web3 world in itself could, what could be different concepts of money that take people back to the spiritual feeling of it or the community feeling of it?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mitali. It's a question that I struggle with. The subject of money is definitely something that I struggle with personally as well. What is my relationship with money, and what is it that I want from it? I think the area that I'm finding interesting to explore is the space of community currencies, and this idea of how can we create systems that allow us to keep the value within the community. And so if cryptocurrencies can come in ways that we can allow to create value and share value within our communities, and ways where communities themselves, so village to village or city to city, is able to transact with that context that they share without having to go into this large homogeneous system that is the US dollar or that is some national currency. I think that can be something that can perhaps be quite different and perhaps allow us to, to share value within communities differently. But I think perhaps even further than that, paradigm shifts might be necessary for us to really capture that spiritual connection. But I think in the more immediate to near term, and I know there are people experimenting with radical ideas of community currencies, and how crypto can play a role in that, which I think might be the more immediate near term use case. Thank you for that.
Amazing. We have time for one more question. Yeah.
Hey, great talk. Thanks. I'm curious to hear more about this DigiCNX project. I'm just the concept of like connecting digital nomads with local folks seems really interesting. I'm just wondering, how did you go about like connecting those two worlds, bridging those two worlds, did you see participation from actual local folks in Chiang Mai, and what did that look like?
Yeah, another good question, a big challenge that we have. So with DigiCNX, we created this about 2 years ago, which was to create a community that went across Web3 and digital rights activists, academics, journalists across the board. We actually, with the pop-up city initiative that happened in October, we started a project called Cosmo Local Chiang Mai, and the idea was there is to really create spaces where we could bring together local people with global nomads, but also create nomads, encourage a culture of understanding local cultures and practices that are there. I think it's hard. For many reasons, linguistic, cultural. There's also a certain energy of Chiang Mai, the sort of sabai, that chill culture, which kind of clashes with this heavy hitter, crypto, global, digital nomad, going. And so I think it'll be a multi-year process, probably. But I think there are slivers of people who are interested in a more deeper connection with nature, and I think we're hoping to be in that liminal space where even small groups of people can start to connect, and we can sort of start to create that culture of conscious stewardship. I'm happy to chat after if you're coming to Chiang Mai or based there or often there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lewis. Please give him a real big applause.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.